I thought the worst part was collapsing alone. It wasn't. The real pain came when I saw my daughter-in-law's post, smiling, sipping wine, while I lay hooked to monitors. That's when I knew. This family had room for appearances, but not for truth. From my kitchen window, I watched my son tie a red bow on a BMW for his mother-in-law, while I held a pink plastic piggy bank with 3 lonely dollars inside. The bow glowed under the icicle lights, bright as a parade sash, while the pig sat squat and silly beside the plate of sugar cookies I had iced that morning. Its painted smile looked almost smug, as though it knew exactly how absurd this night was turning out to be. Out in the driveway, Michael spread his arms wide, his voice carrying through the glass. "For you, Linda!" he shouted. Sophie was right there, filming every angle like a director who wanted to make sure the story was clear. Emma jumped up and down, her boots scattering snow. Jacob pressed his nose to the car window, fogging a circle that looked like a coin. "It has seat warmers," Emma squealed. Jacob chimed in. "And a backup camera," listing features as if they were badges earned on a scout sash. I stood with wet hands and lemon-scented soap stinging the cut on my thumb, listening to the cheer travel past me, not through me. I had basted the ham all afternoon, trimmed the beans, baked rolls, and layered Sophie's favorite trifle no one ever finished. The house smelled of cinnamon, cloves, and honey glaze, the scents that used to mean comfort and togetherness. Tonight, they only reminded me of the draft sneaking through the back door and the hollow space where Richard should have been, carving the meat with his steady hands. Holidays have a way of keeping score, and I was starting the night in the red. Michael ducked inside just long enough to hand me a glossy gift bag. "Mom, this is symbolic," he said, as if that excused the wait. I pulled out a bubblegum pink piggy bank, its slot grinning. Inside were 3 wrinkled dollar bills. I laughed, the polite laugh you use when crying would spoil the table. "How thoughtful," I said. The words dried in my mouth like paste. I set the pig beside the cookies where it sat like an unwanted guest. Linda swept in on perfume that announced itself a second before she did. "Michael, you shouldn't have," she cooed, which meant, of course, he should have. She kissed his cheek, squeezed Sophie's arm, then leaned toward me. "Your boy has such a generous heart." The phrase, "your boy," sounded less like pride and more like a reminder that she now owned the spotlight. I folded the tissue paper back into the bag as carefully as a nurse making a bed, just to keep my hands busy. "Come sit in it, Evelyn," Sophie called, already stepping back to get the perfect frame. "It smells like new leather." I looked at my red, cracked hands and shook my head. "You all go ahead. The rolls need watching." No one argued. The door shut behind them, brisk and decisive, as though the night had been waiting for them alone. Through the glass, I watched them pile into the car. The bow bobbed as Linda clapped her hands and slid into the passenger seat. The engine purred, smooth and smug. Michael beamed like a man who had solved adulthood in one purchase. Sophie's phone caught his good side, the one he used for his work profile. The taillights drifted down the street like 2 cherries on melting ice cream, leaving the driveway gray and ordinary again. Inside, the oven hummed, and Richard's old clock ticked. I glazed the ham one more time and thought of the year he died, when Michael had stood in this kitchen and promised we would take care of each other. Grief tied its own invisible bow around us then, pulling us closer. Somewhere along the years, the knot slipped loose. I picked up the piggy bank and shook it. The 3 bills rustled like brittle leaves. "Symbolic," I muttered. Symbols often do the heavy lifting when respect doesn't show up. I laid the table with our china, setting 4 places, then 2 more out of habit. One plate had a crack Richard used to trace with his thumb, calling it a river on a map. Habits flow like rivers, too, even when bridges break. The door burst open again, letting in a blast of cold. "The steering is so smooth," Linda gushed. She glanced at the trifle, then the cookies, then the pig in that order. "Oh, Michael, look how she made everything," she said, and I couldn't tell whether the she was meant to honor me or to push me to the edge of my own kitchen. Michael kissed my cheek light as a stamp. "Thanks for dinner, Mom," he said, already sliding into his coat. "We're taking Linda to show Aunt Carol." Sophie added, "We're stuffed. We ate at the dealership." Her voice wore a friendly sweater, but the wool scratched. Emma and Jacob raced in a circle and out again, chanting, "Seat warmers," like a chorus line. I smiled and hummed along as though I knew the tune. The quiet that followed folded over me like a quilt. I rinsed the roasting pan, wiped the stovetop, stacked plates. A cranberry rolled across the counter and headed for the baseboard until I caught it with a dishcloth. Outside, the neighbor's inflatable snowman collapsed and rose with mechanical sighs. The small noises of an ordinary evening reminded me that dishes never lie. You know who came, who stayed, and who left by the scrape of forks. When I reached for a towel, my eyes landed on a black Kate Spade purse sitting by the cookies. Its gold logo caught the string lights with quiet authority. Linda's purse. She had set it down like royalty sets down a glove, certain the room would guard it. I shouldn't have touched it. Women like me know that sentence by heart. I moved it from the counter's edge so splashes wouldn't touch the leather. The purse felt heavier than it looked, as if expectation itself had weight. For a moment, I eased the zipper open. A wallet, thick with cards, a rhinestone phone, a prescription bottle with her name. The zipper's sigh was small but decisive, the sound of secrets opening their eyes. I listened for tires on the driveway, voices at the door. Nothing but the clock and the heater. My pulse filled the silence. I shut the purse carefully, placed it back exactly, strap curled like a comma. Even when my heart hurt, my hands remembered their manners. Food cooled into leftovers. The ham dulled, beans lost their shine, the trifle sagged. I packed everything into containers with blue snap lids and labeled them in tidy block letters. Ham, rolls, beans. My fridge has always looked like a promise of tomorrow. I made myself a plate and ate at the wobbly little table Richard built, pressing my knee against the leg to steady it. Cinnamon, salt, and the metallic taste of self-control filled my mouth. Headlights swept across the wall an hour later. The door opened, bringing Michael's satisfied voice and Linda's commentary about how the salesman called the color jet black, as if black needed permission. She reached for her purse without looking, her hand pausing for a fraction of a second before gripping the strap. "There you are," she said, to the purse, to herself, maybe even to me. "Dinner's in the fridge," I offered, holding out containers. "Plenty to take." Sophie rubbed her stomach and smiled. "We're stuffed." The we again, like a password to a club I didn't join. Michael hugged the kids, who smelled of car heat and winter air, then shepherded everyone out with the confidence of someone who believes schedules bend for him. The house exhaled once more. I lined up the containers in the fridge, soldiers back to duty. The pig stared from the counter, bright and absurd. I touched its ear. "Symbolic," I repeated, as if the word might finally confess its meaning. The clock chimed, steady as judgment. I washed my plate, watched steam fog the window. Outside, neighbors' porches glowed with manger scenes and plastic reindeer, December doing what it always does, hosting contradictions. The purse remained on the counter, calm as a choice. I wiped a ring from the stone, straightened the cookie plate's holly pattern. My phone lay face down by the stove, dark as if it had decided on silence. Emma's mitten print smeared the storm door, a fat star pressed too hard. I remembered the first Christmas Richard and I shared, when he dropped quarters in a jar and called it our travel fund. We never made it far, just tournaments, hospital shifts, hardware stores. Respect, I thought, isn't measured in distance or dollars. It's in how people behave when time is thin and money thinner. I rinsed the glass, shut off the tap, and reached for the towel. My hand found the pig, then, without meaning to, the purse. Side by side they sat, pink plastic grin and sleek black leather, haloed under the kitchen light. In the window, my reflection balanced them like scales. Something in me shifted then. Not a crash, just the quiet shift of ground under frost. Across the street, the bow still flashed on someone else's porch, rightful and proud. In here, the pig held $3 limp, the purse whatever it carried all season. I wasn't ready to look further, not yet, but I was done pretending symbolic meant small. The heater clicked off. The house listened. I set the purse exactly where it had been, right beside the ridiculous pig, and turned out the light. In the dim, their shapes lingered, one bright, one sleek, both suddenly honest. I stood a moment, letting my eyes adjust to a night that revealed what daylight edits away. Then I locked the door, fingers turning the new deadbolt I had installed after Richard died. It closed with a sure, satisfying click. I told myself I was only keeping Linda's purse safe, but my hands had a mind of their own. It sat on my counter like a visiting queen who assumed the room would guard her jewels. The piggy bank grinned nearby, pink and unserious. The dishwasher hummed its tired lullaby. The living room clock ticked in patient syllables, and winter wind tested the eaves. January 2nd, 2020, first quiet night after a not-so-quiet Christmas. I made tea for the business of it. Steam wobbled above the mug. My eyes kept returning to the purse anyway. Black leather, gold hardware, a strap like a sentence that expected to be finished. I carried it into the living room and set it on Richard's recliner. The cushions sighed in the shape of someone who didn't come back. Michael once told me to toss that chair, said it dated the room. I told him grief gets to keep one seat. The zipper moved under my thumb with the easy confidence of something opened often. On top, a sleek wallet, the kind that makes cash stand at attention. Beneath it, folded papers peeked out the way secrets test daylight. Bank statements, 3 months' worth. The numbers were the kind that alter posture. 6 figures in checking, transfers like tide charts, a money market called Sunset. Nordstrom and Tiffany cards flashed embossed letters. A prescription bottle rattled, orange and small, printed with her name and a recent date. The purse buzzed, a polite vibration that still made me jump. The phone lit up. Deposit confirmed, $15,000. Then another buzz. Missed call. Brian Chen, 34. Then another, and another. 32 total. I pressed the side button to darken the screen and sat back, the recliner complaining as if it preferred better stories. I told myself again that I was only keeping things safe. That's what good women in old houses say while they inventory objects that betray intentions. I touched the wallet, counted credit slots filled to capacity, and slid it back where it had sat. The tea cooled, steam tracing an oval like breath on glass. Unlocked devices insist. The phone lit once more, and before I could stop myself, my thumb woke it. No passcode. Either arrogance or exhaustion. Both fit. Notifications stacked like snow. Calendar reminders. At the top, a pinned thread with the name I'd already learned. I opened photos because my thumb decided before the rest of me could vote. The camera roll was domestic at first. Plates at restaurants, a sunset out a passenger window, selfies with a softening filter. Then the angle changed. My hallway, the little shelf where I keep spare keys, my office door, unlatched. The blue folder with Richard's name, opened and photographed like evidence. His death certificate framed tidy in the shot, our marriage certificate beneath, my property tax bill folded back to show the lot number, and a picture of a card I keep in a jewelry box I never leave open. My social security card, the digits blurred by shadow but legible enough. I flattened my hand against the chair arm and counted to 5. The landline rang, sharp in a room that prefers soft sounds. "Mrs. Brooks?" a man asked, official but kind. "This is Officer Patterson with the Pittsburgh Police. Linda Chen has been reported missing. Do you have any knowledge of her whereabouts?" I stared at the purse, deliberate on the chair. "Missing?" I repeated, adding the right amount of surprise. He asked when I had last seen her. "Earlier this evening. My son took her home after dinner." Not untrue, just trimmed. He said they would follow up. I thanked him the way you thank a light for turning green. Silence slid back into place. In the chair, the purse looked calm about its choices. I opened messages. The thread with Brian Chin had its own weather. "Mom, call me. Where are you? We need to talk." The one that tightened the air. "The money isn't clean. Please don't do this." Later. "Deposit flagged. Call me now." A voicemail transcription from an unknown number read, "Ms. Chen, this is regarding the Williams file." "Williams?" The name rang through the room like a dropped spoon. I looked down my hallway. The office door was shut, locked since summer. I ran my thumb along the door trim anyway, searching for new scars. Nothing fresh. That didn't soothe me. A person can learn a house by studying the people who love it, and Linda had studied. Back in the chair, I scrolled. More photos, my desk from a lower angle. The top drawer, a thumb width open. The glass jar where I keep old keys labeled in my handwriting. She had wandered my rooms like a curator. The widow exhibit, Pittsburgh, mid-century, well-preserved. The dishwasher clicked to dry. I held the prescription bottle to the lamp. Escitalopram 10 mg, dispensed 8 weeks ago from a Seattle practice. Seattle, yet here, in Pittsburgh, her purse sat in my chair. I carried it back to the kitchen and set it beside the piggy bank. Pink and black, plastic and leather. I lined them up as if they were answering roll call. A plow clattered down the street, throwing salt like lace. Respect, I thought, is not a bow on a hood or a speech at a dealership. It's the quiet way people behave when time is thin. The phone bannered an email. Meeting confirmed. Thursday 10 a.m. Bring Williams file. The word bring slid under my skin. I opened photos again and zoomed. My signature on an old insurance form. Richard's name above a line that ends things. In the corner, the steel edge of the small safe where I keep the will and the deed. If I stood on a kitchen chair and leaned left, I could make that same angle. I felt suddenly like I'd been walking past open windows for months. Headlights eased across the wall and pooled at the baseboards. Outside, a car idled. The house shifted into that alert stillness you feel when a clinic door opens and the nurse calls your name. I parted the curtain with 2 fingers. Linda stepped from the passenger seat, smoothing her coat, chin up like someone checking a horizon line. She looked at my porch as if measuring it for new steps. She paused, glanced toward the window, toward me, then back to the knob. I stayed where I was, letting the house breathe with me. The purse sat in the center of the counter, patient as a chess piece before a move. I wiped my palms on a dish towel and straightened the cookie plate, as if the order of small things could ready me for a larger disorder. The clock ticked. The dishwasher sighed. My heart learned a new beat named Not Yet. 3 light taps. Her knock sounded like manners taught at expensive tables. I didn't open immediately. In the reflection, I watched her posture settle into concern, a shape she wore well. Maybe she had practiced in other kitchens, other winters, other houses with old recliners holding their shape. I understood then the purse hadn't been forgotten. It had been placed. A baited hook attends to its own shine. If I returned it untouched, I'd be logged as harmless. If I poked around, I'd be logged as useful. Either way, I was being measured. My hand found the deadbolt and paused. I looked back at the counter, at the ridiculous pig and the deliberate purse, 2 versions of a story side by side. The night could decide what role I played, or I could. I turned the lock slowly, making sure the click sounded ordinary, and pulled the door inward just enough to let January in without letting the truth out. As I watched Linda stroll back up my driveway hours later, her eyes scanning my porch like a surveyor, I knew I was no longer the only one investigating. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sharpened pencils like weapons and waited for sunrise. The sharpener whined in the quiet kitchen, shavings curling like secrets on the counter. The piggy bank caught the first gray light and winked at me, insolent in its pink plastic. $3, I muttered. That's what they think I'm worth. The words landed heavier than the coins ever could. By morning, I had already called the appraisal company whose card Linda once slid across my table like a coaster. My voice was calm, my tone polite. The woman on the other end tapped at her keyboard. "Oh yes, Mrs. Brooks," she said. "We have a recent record. Property evaluation was requested by Michael Brooks, acting under power of attorney." The phrase buckled my knees. I gripped the phone harder. "Could you repeat that?" She did, without hesitation, each word like a nail sealing a crate. My son had signed something he had no right to sign. The office of Margaret Hill smelled of stale coffee and loyalty. I'd known her for 20 years, ever since she helped Richard and me set up our first will after Emma was born. Shelves groaned with binders, blinds drawn against a winter sun that cared little for detail. Margaret squinted at the document she slid across the desk toward me. "Here it is, filed December 27th, notarized in Allegheny County. Evelyn Brooks, granting Michael Brooks full power of attorney." My own name curled across the page, my signature, but not mine. The J in my middle initial swooped the wrong way, an imitation like a mask slightly off-center. The notary seal pressed into the paper left a faint ring of coffee, careless. I traced the edge with my fingertip and felt the tremor in my hand, half fury, half disbelief. "They forged me," I whispered. Margaret tapped her pen against her pad. "Yes, and it'll hold until we challenge it. But Evelyn, this is serious. They can move assets, authorize sales, open accounts." Her bluntness steadied me more than comfort would have. "So, we challenge it," I said, "and we build something they can't touch." Her brow lifted. I leaned forward. "The will. I want every asset directed to the South Hills Scholarship Fund. Ironclad. No room for interpretation, no wiggle for family drama." My voice surprised me with its certainty. Margaret studied me, then nodded. "All right, but it'll draw fire." I smiled without humor. "Then let them burn." When I returned home, snow clung to the gutters, dripping like tiny clocks. Michael and Sophie were at my kitchen table, cups of coffee already in front of them as though they owned the morning. Sophie's nails tapped the mug, a rhythm rehearsed. "Mom, we need to talk," Michael began, his tone the same one he used as a teenager when he confessed denting the car. Sophie jumped in, eyes wide with practiced worry. "It's about Linda. Her son Brian is controlling. You wouldn't understand, but Michael and I are just trying to protect everyone." Her voice reached for sympathy, the way an actress reaches for applause. I folded my coat over the chair back, hung my purse carefully, and sat. The piggy bank still grinned from the counter, an absurd witness. I let the silence stretch until even the clock sounded impatient. "The police called me last night," I said evenly. Michael flinched. Sophie blinked too fast. "They said Linda reported missing. Strange, isn't it, that she was on my porch not an hour later?" My tone carried no accusation, just observation. It rattled them more than yelling could have. Sophie leaned in, her wedding ring flashing. "We're just asking for trust. Families share authority. That power of attorney wasn't mine," I cut in, my voice sharp as the pencils I'd sharpened at dawn. Michael shifted in his seat, torn between defending and retreating. "Mom, maybe there's a misunderstanding," he offered weakly. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid it flat on the table. The forged document stared back at them, Margaret's sticky notes bristling like yellow flags. "Tell me," I said quietly, "how you afforded that BMW." The question dropped between us heavier than any gavel. Michael's mouth opened, closed. Sophie's hand froze mid-gesture. The piggy bank caught another glint of light, 3 limp dollars inside. A child's joke made cruel by timing. I felt the shift then, the balance tilting. Sophie's story, neat as embroidery, began to fray. Michael's silence filled the room with doubt. When Sophie's hand trembled over her wedding ring, I realized the cracks in their story were wider than they knew. Linda suggested we meet at a downtown cafe, neutral ground, she called it, but I knew predators choose the hunting field carefully. It was one of those places trying to be upscale and cozy at once. Burnt espresso clung to the air, fighting cinnamon sugar from stale pastries. The windows fogged with condensation, making the sidewalk disappear into a blur. A waitress smiled at me absently as I slid into the corner booth. Linda was already there, coat off, scarf draped just so over her handbag. Her diamond bracelet caught the light and flung it toward my eyes. "You look tired," she said. "Are you sleeping enough?" I smiled like I hadn't been up all night cataloging files. "Barely," I replied, folding my hands in my lap. "It's been a strange winter." Linda patted my hand gently. "That's why I thought we should talk, just the two of us. So much confusion flying around lately." Her latte arrived before mine, complete with a heart in the foam. Mine came bitter and undecorated. She sipped, watching me over the rim. "You know, Evelyn, you remind me of my own mother. Stubborn, smart, always holding everything together while no one notices." "People notice eventually," I said. Linda leaned forward. "I mean it. That's why I want to include you in something beneficial for everyone. You've got assets just sitting there, not working. Money should move." She pulled a manila folder from her bag like it was nothing. "I've been advising a group. We acquire properties in undervalued areas, then lease them back to the original owners. Tax advantaged, no public record, very clean. You stay in your house, just legally, it transfers." "And this group?" I asked. "They're based?" "International," she said, brushing a crumb off her lap. "Singapore, Liechtenstein, some of the sharpest minds in real estate." My coffee burned a line down my throat. "Is that even legal?" Linda smiled like I was a toddler asking if rain came from heaven. "Perfectly. We just have to act quickly. The market window is narrow." I nodded, blinking slowly. "And you'd recommend this for your own mother?" "She's already signed with us," Linda said, too fast. I filed that away. Her mother's been dead 5 years. She pushed the folder toward me. "Look it over. No pressure. I just didn't want you missing out." I opened it with deliberate slowness. The words blurred slightly. Transfer. Offshore custodian. Reverse title claim. But my recorder, hidden in my coat pocket, caught every syllable. I asked dumb questions. She answered with polished ease, and then she slipped. "Of course, we process everything offshore to avoid red tape," she said, stirring her drink. "Cleaner for everyone. That's why we need to sign before March." My silence must have stretched too long because she chuckled and added, "I'm being too technical again." "I prefer technical," I said. "It helps me sleep." We finished our drinks in silence. She offered to pay. I let her. Outside, the snow had started again, light and mean. As I stepped outside, the cold slapped my cheeks, but it couldn't touch the fire warming inside my ribs. I walked slowly, letting the sound of my boots echo against the wet pavement. I could still see Linda in the window, reapplying lipstick with the same precision she used to maneuver my son. I paused outside a florist 2 doors down, pretending to browse the arrangement in the window while I watched her through the fogged cafe glass. She was on the phone already, hand to her ear, bracelet glinting in the shifting light. Probably briefing someone, or spinning. The cinnamon roll in my purse was still warm. I wasn't sure if I'd eat it, or just let it go stale as a souvenir of the moment someone tried to dress greed in sugar. Back home, I set the recorder on the kitchen counter, next to the piggy bank. Black plastic beside pink. 2 lies, different shapes. I played back Linda's voice, each sentence like silk lined with razors. I made notes, paused, rewound, wrote down timestamps. Tom used to say that paper fades, but voices last, especially when they don't know they're being kept. I slept well that night, first time in weeks. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls, one to Margaret Hill, the other to a journalist I hadn't spoken to in years, back when she covered local zoning scandals. I didn't say much, just that I had a story she might want, and documents, and audio. I also started a new document folder on my desktop. Chen, Trust Schemes. Inside, I copied every file, labeled, dated, backed up on a flash drive taped to the underside of Richard's recliner. When the doorbell rang that afternoon, I let it ring twice before answering. Linda stood there again, holding a white envelope. "Just a little follow-up," she said sweetly. "Some materials for you to review." I took it, but said nothing. "Oh," she added, her eyes flicking to the recorder now absent from the counter. "And Evelyn, discretion is everything in these matters." "Of course," I said, stepping aside so she could see the piggy bank still perched beside the toaster. "Some things are worth more when they're kept safe." She didn't smile, not this time. After she left, I opened the envelope. Legalese, draft contracts, a mock timeline of the sale and rental agreement. It read like a roadmap to theft. At the bottom, a post-it in her handwriting. "Let's move quickly before the March deadline. Trust me. L." I peeled the note off and pressed it into my notebook, beneath a printed transcript of our cafe meeting. Evidence, organized, growing. That night, as the neighborhood lights flickered out one by one, I stood by the window, watching shadows settle across the snow. The recorder was locked in the safe now. The envelope filed, scanned, and emailed to Margaret. I touched the piggy bank again, the one Emma had giggled over on Christmas Eve, and whispered, "We're worth more than they think." Linda thought she could write the ending. She hadn't counted on me holding the pen. Marcus showed up the next morning in a suit he couldn't afford, carrying a folder thick with papers I never asked for. He knocked once, then opened the door like it was still his. I didn't rise from my chair. The fireplace behind me popped once, soft heat against my back. The piggy bank sat on the counter where I'd left it, still pink, still pitiful. I tapped its belly with one fingernail. Michael stood there, smile wilted, clutching the folder like a child bringing home a failing report card. "I thought we could go through this together," he said. I nodded to the couch. "Suit yourself." He sat carefully, placing the folder on the coffee table as if it were a gift. "It's all here. The investment summary, the reverse mortgage options." Sophie and I talked to Linda's advisors. "Whose advisors?" I cut in, not sharply, but enough to leave a mark. Michael cleared his throat. "Well, Linda's people have helped her grow her assets significantly. We thought you might benefit from similar vehicles." I reached for the folder. The pages inside were glossy, too slick, like brochures pretending to be contracts. One in particular caught my eye, a breakdown of property asset liquidation under an entity I didn't recognize. "How'd you afford the BMW, Michael?" I asked. He blinked. I smiled. "Cash or credit?" His lips parted, then closed again. "Linda helped. It was a gesture. She said it was important." "For whom?" Michael didn't answer. "You're in debt," I said plainly. "No, I mean, we're fine." "You took out a second mortgage, didn't you?" His eyes darted toward the kitchen, as if Sophie might walk in and rescue him. I waited. He looked down. "Yes." "And you lost your job in November." He winced. "I didn't want to worry you." I leaned back, letting silence drape the room. The folder sat untouched now, heavy with the weight of false promises. "I know about the forged power of attorney," I said. Michael looked up sharply. "What? What are you talking about?" "I've seen the document. It's not my signature." His shoulders fell. "I didn't know. I swear." Linda said it was pre-cleared, some kind of default clause. She lied. The crack in his composure became a fracture. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "I thought she was helping us. Sophie said Linda just wanted to make sure everything was efficient." I folded the folder closed with one hand. "Tell me what Linda promised you." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Stability. She said the house would be a burden for you soon, that selling it would free up cash. And the BMW, she said it was proof of loyalty, that if we handled things correctly, the trust would shift." "She made it sound like I was already gone," I said. He didn't deny it. Sophie stepped in from the hallway then, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Linda's been generous. She's done more for this family than you realize." I stared at her. "That may be true, but she's done more to it than for it." Sophie's voice rose. "She just wants what's best for herself," I finished. Sophie flinched. I stood, folder still in hand. "You both have one chance left to get on the right side of this." Sophie scoffed. "Or what?" I smiled. "Or you'll be holding a pink piggy bank too, wondering where everything went." Michael sat frozen. Sophie's fingers trembled, drifting toward her wedding ring, twisting it unconsciously. That was when I opened the second folder, the one Margaret had helped me prepare. I slid it across the table. Bank statements, but fake. Asset transfers, but bogus. A mock letter from a shell buyer, interested in the house. Their faces drained of color. "You forged my signature," I said. "Now I forge your future, unless you help me fix it." Michael's voice cracked. "What do you want?" "I want the truth, in writing, and then I want Linda." Sophie's eyes narrowed. "You'll ruin everything." "No," I said. "I'll reset it." That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my planner open and the burner phone Margaret had sent me. When she picked up, her voice was sharp as ever. "Talk." "She came close today," I said, flinched at the forged documents. "She doesn't trust Sophie anymore." "Good, then we can move faster. I need audio gear, clean, and I want a fake buyer." There was a pause. "You're sure?" "I'm past sure." We outlined the plan in clipped phrases. Margaret would draft a decoy offer letter from a shell company. I'd float the idea in casual conversation. Linda would lean in. She always did when she smelled leverage. After the call, I sat back. The fire had gone out, the ashes gray and resting. I didn't need warmth. I needed precision. On the table lay 3 objects, my planner, the piggy bank, and a pen. I tapped the pig once more, then turned to a fresh page and began to write names, dates, accounts, and entry points. The quiet war was over. What came next would be loud. 6 months later, the red bow sat faded in Linda's garage, while she sat in federal prison. Summer had painted everything in yellows and golds, even the porch railing, chipped now, but honest. I poured lemonade into glass pitchers while Emma and Jacob chased fireflies barefoot across the yard. Their laughter echoed, no longer edged with tension. I watched them, remembering the silence that used to sit between these walls like an uninvited guest. On the mantel behind me rested Tom's wedding photo, his tuxedo crisp, my veil crooked in the breeze. Beside it sat the pink piggy bank, no longer sad, but still a reminder. $3. That's what they'd offered me. $3 and a red bow. Linda had pleaded not guilty, of course. She wore pearls to court, but the documents were irrefutable. My forged signature, the fake investment shell, the recorded cafe meeting where she'd mentioned offshore accounts like she was sharing her favorite biscotti recipe. Brian Chen had turned state's witness, said his mother's greed had outpaced her shame, said he couldn't protect her anymore. The jury took 2 hours. Elder fraud, forgery, conspiracy. The words landed like doors slamming shut. 5 years without parole. Linda never looked back at me from the bench. She stared at Michael instead. I think that hurt him more than the cuffs. Michael came home a different man. He sold the BMW within a week, posted it online with the title, "One Very Expensive Lesson." The money went toward debt. He and Sophie started counseling, twice a week, every Tuesday and Saturday, rain or shine. They came to dinner now, not out of obligation, but choice. Sophie brought salad, no longer store-bought, but made from scratch. Michael offered to mow the lawn, fix the fence, clean the gutters. I let him. Not because I needed help, but because I could choose what I accepted. We sat on the porch, cicadas humming their summer hymn. Sophie braided Emma's hair while Jacob arranged rocks and patterns on the steps. I handed Michael a tall glass of lemonade. He reached into his pocket and passed me a folded envelope. "I wanted to write it down," he said. Inside was his handwriting, neat and slow, like he'd thought through every loop and line. He apologized, not for one thing, but for everything. For disbelief, for distance, for letting Linda speak louder than I ever could. He ended with, "I forgot who raised me." I folded the note and set it beside the piggy bank on the mantel. Later that night, after they'd left, I made tea and sat with the screen door open. The porch light buzzed. A moth danced near the bulb, persistent and clumsy. My phone lit up. "Margaret." "All quiet?" she texted. "For now," I replied. A pause, then, "You did it." "No," I typed, staring at the piggy bank. "We did." I closed the phone and leaned back in Tom's old rocker. The cushions were threadbare, but the rhythm still worked. Back and forth, wood creaking like an old friend clearing its throat. Then I heard the front gate squeak. Jacob's voice rang out. "Grandma, I forgot my flashlight!" I smiled, standing to meet him. "Check the kitchen drawer," I called. He bounded past, feet slapping the floorboards, trail of firefly glitter behind him. And I realized Linda had tried to steal my house, but she'd given me back something greater. She gave me back my family. The following Sunday, they brought a framed photo with them. Sophie had it wrapped in brown craft paper and tied with string, modest, almost reverent. I unwrapped it slowly, fingertips brushing against the glass. It was a blown-up print of our wedding day, newly digitized, the colors richer than I remembered. Tom's hand on mine, my eyes squinting against the sun, veil caught mid-flight. Michael no older than 10, holding the hem of my gown like he didn't want to let go. Back then, we'd had nothing but a used station wagon and a freezer full of casseroles, but we were happy. We were whole. "I had it restored," Sophie said, voice soft. "Thought it deserved a better frame." It now sat above the fireplace, beside the piggy bank. Past and present, pain and repair. I no longer looked at that photo and saw what was lost. I saw what had been found again, imperfect, bruised, but intact. Later that week, I met with Margaret one last time. "The estate?" she asked, clicking her pen. "Split 3 ways," I said. "Charity, Emma's education, and 1 discretionary fund. For them, conditional." Margaret arched an eyebrow. "Define conditional." "Transparency, counseling, and Sunday dinners. If they ever stop showing up, the money stops too." She smiled. "You always were practical." "No," I said, glancing out the window. "I just learned the hard way what's worth investing in." That night, I poured a splash of bourbon into my tea, just the way Tom used to, and stood at the kitchen window. The lawn was freshly trimmed, the porch newly painted. The red bow had long faded, but I kept it, tucked into a drawer, flattened under old birthday cards. Not as a keepsake, as a reminder. Because respect, once neglected, takes time to replant. And forgiveness, well, Forgiveness grows slower than resentment, but it roots deeper. Emma joined me by the sink, her small hand reaching for mine. "Grandma, do you think bad people know they're bad?" I looked at her, surprised. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" She shrugged. "I just wonder if they ever say sorry, like really mean it." I bent down and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Sometimes they do," I said. "And sometimes, if we're lucky, we learn to mean it too." She nodded solemnly, then ran off with a flashlight, determined to catch the fireflies before bedtime. I stayed behind, my hand resting lightly on the piggy bank. It had never been about the $3. It was about what they thought I was worth, and what I chose to believe about myself in the end. As the sun dipped low behind the neighbor's sycamore tree, I exhaled, the kind of exhale that empties a season's worth of breath. This was not the ending I imagined. It was better. Because in reclaiming my home, I found my voice. And in setting boundaries, I bowed to no one, but I found the strength to forgive. The days became quieter after that, not empty, just fuller in softer ways. I started volunteering twice a week at the library downtown, helping seniors file taxes and sort through Medicare plans. It gave my days purpose again. Neighbors who once waved politely now stopped to talk, curious about my little garden, my stories, the lemonade I brewed from scratch. I didn't tell them everything, but I didn't hide anymore either. One afternoon, I caught Michael fixing the porch light, whistling to himself. When he saw me, he smiled. Not with guilt, but with peace. "We good?" he asked. I nodded. "We're working on it." And that was enough. Before bed, I often found myself staring at the piggy bank. I never removed the $3. I never added more. It stayed just the way it had arrived. Hollow, yes, but intact. A totem of what I'd endured and what I'd rebuilt. Linda's name no longer carried weight in my house. Her story ended with a sentence. Mine continued with laughter, inked pages, and the clinking of lemonade glasses on summer nights. Because when you're pushed to the margins, sometimes all it takes is a cracked voice, a taped conversation, and a pink piggy bank to redraw the map of your life. And I did. On my terms. Sometimes it's not the grand betrayals that break us, but the quiet ways we're made to feel invisible. That pink piggy bank didn't just hold $3, it held the moment I decided I was worth more. If we listen closely, life whispers back when we find the courage to speak. Boundaries aren't walls, they're invitations to respect, to understanding, to healing. And forgiveness? It's not weakness, it's the bravest kind of strength. If this story touched a part of your own, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts. Leave a note, share a memory. There's always room at the table for one more voice.